don't know what's going on anymore. It's a mess.
So there's talent that's involved here. That's as much as I can give you as a positive. I actually fell asleep while watching it the first time.
These two numbers are to be disposed of as demands to make on their parts, however, before they are eliminated.
Here we are, back at Dave and Kyle. Ooh, see how I usurped the title? At Kyle and Dave.
How dare you?
At Kyle and Dave versus the Machine at the video YouTube edition. This week we watched THX 1138.
We did.
And if you watched, and we know you did, the trailer reaction, this is George Lucas's first film. Kyle, what happened?
You know, Dave, I said this in our trailer reaction vid on Monday, again, the lowest form of entertainment. My suspicions were proven true in that this feels like a student film, which it basically was, with a bigger budget where, sure, the ideas that are being grappled with are things that I feel artists have been grappling with for a long time. I think most notably 1984. So it's not necessarily the ideas that are bad. It's not even necessarily that the plot, such as it is,
It's just the movie.
is bad. I just find it incredibly paced, uninteresting to watch up until like the final chase scene, where I think there's some inventiveness going on here. You see a guy like literally rip over his like handlebars, have some actual stunts that they did. You can see the talent of George Lucas and the ideas that he was, grappling with as a young man. I did not have a great time watching this movie. I realized also that my window is open, so I'm going to close that, Dave, and deal with that sound problem.
Hopefully somebody walked by and is like, you fucking asshole. I love
Has a
sex.
THX tattoo on his chest. Robert Duvall's on his shoulder here.
If you're going to get a portrait of any celebrity, it better be Robert Duvall, just on your chest.
The notorious Bobby D.
I didn't enjoy this at all. You can tell that, as we learned, Francis Ford Coppola gave George Lucas a reasonable amount of money.
They both formed a new production company in order to make this movie.
We don't remember what it's called.
American Zoetrope.
Of course he does. Was it wasted? Was it well used? We talked about in Red Sun, when a director doesn't understand or have that instinct for scope, breadth with a D, the movie becomes a bit claustrophobic. And George Lucas is better than that. You can tell that. That's the talent we see. You can tell he wants to make the space opera, and it's coming. But this wasn't it. This was literally a converted student film that he shot. I think it was 10 minutes originally.
Something
Should have stayed
like
that way. He tried to touch so many weird concepts. There was, the 1984 thing. There's this authoritarian, fascist robots, C-3PO's in it as a guard. I don't know. The whole thing is just so confusing.
There's a lot of
He doesn't like sex.
things that he's dealing with that I don't know if they ever come together. I mean, there are a lot of fans of this movie. We should probably point that out. There are lovers of this movie. I just think there's better examples of what this is going for. The other part of it, too, this is a very George Lucas thing. There is no way to actually watch the original copy of THX anymore unless you have a copy of it somehow. So when we were watching that trailer, there isn't like the weird monkey things that are jumping on them at the end. It looks like there's actual people.
Yeah.
So that actually makes a little bit more sense that they're these like, I don't know, underdeveloped,
Mutants
devolved
or-
mutant things living
Humanoids
underground.
would have worked better.
So that's interesting. It's like, oh, like when I saw this, like, oh, okay. This kind of makes more sense than it just have being random monkeys that are attacking them for no reason. We have a bit of a conversation in our podcast episode here about just George Lucas, the man. And Mr. Yun over here has been famously anti-Lucas.
What?
The person.
As a human
in
being.
our entire podcast,
Yeah.
as a human being, he constantly brings it up how much you don't like him as a person. And
It's his face. There's just something about his face.
the thing about it is that I think that there is, as I said, there's talent that is shown here that I think eventually gets grown into. Just comparing to other films I've just recently seen, I'm thinking of like a Get Carter or even the Red Sun example that we keep going back to, is that at the very least, even at this young age, there seems to be an eye for like, okay, we can compose these shots in a way that is visually interesting, that obscures something that then comes into frame. So there's talent that's involved here. That's as much as I can give you as a positive for THX, because I did find the first half pretty dreadfully boring.
75%.
I actually fell asleep. While watching it the first time.
I mean, the other problem that I have with George Lucas is I want to think of him as a director, but as as we learn, he doesn't think of himself as a director.
No.
He thinks of himself as a millionaire. Like, was the quote, he told someone he wanted to be a millionaire before he was 30 years old. I think he accomplished that. And he just wanted to build films, which is why I think when he does the storyboarding stuff, he's very good at that. The visuals are, like even this as a first film, there are some moments where you're like, oh, that's very pretty. And then what he does with it, you're like, oh, it's a waste of a shot. They're just standing around in this white box.
Right.
And randomly a woman came out of the box and they tried to rape her. And I don't know what's going on anymore. It's a mess.
And I think that this is like the danger of psychoanalyzing people that we don't know. But, we have a podcast, so that is what we are supposed to do.
What we get paid for.
Yeah, what we get paid for. This is my psychoanalyzation of George Lucas, where it feels like this is a film that he did believe in, that he wanted to make, and then realized it made absolutely no money. No one was interested in this, which eventually leads him to be like, oh, well, I can take maybe some similar ideas and make something that's super populist. That becomes Star Wars and makes him $1 billion. So I think that to get to Star Wars, you almost need this first step of him realizing that to be the ultra-capitalist that he is.
I don't want to judge George Lucas on his first
film. And this is how he believes morally what things should be like. I don't know.
Like all the first films, of course you're going to expect it to be raw. You're going to want it, really, to be bad, because then you can build a story of somebody who was dedicated enough to better themselves. And we have seen some films by journeyman directors where everything has a single tone, and that's nobody remembers who they are.
You might think of like a He's All That or something.
Don't
like
do that. You've hung your name already on that piece of shit. I'm not going to let that go.
I didn't like the movie. I told you.
You gave it a 2. That's 2 more than 0.
That is true. How much more is that than 1138, though, Dave? I don't know how the math works in this world.
We've talked about, I don't know if on this podcast, but definitely in conversation, is Star Wars is a film created by a community and with some collaboration. There's stories of Francis Ford Coppola and Spielberg and all these people that had their hands, his wife at the time. And so that is a film that comes together with many creative minds. But one thing that I don't like about George Lucas is this hubris. Like once he has this ego, he comes back and rebuilds this with the shittiest CGI, and people, I don't know, like why do we let that happen? I mean, we don't have control.
It's true for so many artists, and I've seen it with other people. I'm now blanket on any examples, but I find that maybe Taylor Swift's a good example. I was actually going to use Tarantino, I think, to an extent, where you get to a certain level and then people won't say no to you, and that's for the worst, because when you have those people that can step in like, actually, this I don't think is going to work, or hey, maybe there's a better way to do that, when there's those, not necessarily gatekeepers, but people who push you a little bit to rethink or reevaluate something, that's oftentimes when better art gets made, because it's not just you and only you, especially in a filmmaking process when it is really a collaborative environment, or should be. You need those people to, whether it's your editor, your DOP, whatever, even an actor that can be like, actually, have we thought about this, and maybe there's a better way to get to the same idea. And I think Lucas lost that after you make a huge franchise, and then no one wants to say no to you anymore.
We learned too, I mean, this is fairly common knowledge, that he only directed Star Wars, really, and he produced the next 2.
He makes THX, American Graffiti, the original Star Wars, does not direct the 2 immediate follow-ups.
Makes a bunch of money, divorces his wife because he won't give her any accreditation, builds some of the best special effects companies of the 80s and 90s, and then
comes back and directs 3 prequels, and then
with
hasn't
Jar Jar Binks.
Hasn't done a thing.
Literally.
Well, hasn't done anything since then.
Face.
Well, anyways.
I'm so bitter.
THX is what we're talking about today on our podcast.
Sorry, Kyle, it's Thux. Yeah, was there anything else? Weird religious stuff that didn't make sense?
Yeah, go and take a listen to our full conversation, because we do delve into it pretty in-depth.
I don't remember my score, but I wouldn't recommend anyone needs to see it. Even George Lucas nerds.
You did rate it more than He's All That. That's all that I remember.
The real question at the end of the year will be He's All That versus the $1 Million Duck. And honestly, I'm not sure.
$1 Million Duck is the worst.
I'm not sure.
Well, I can tell you conclusively that it is worse. At the very least, He's All That is a movie.
Is it though?
So
is it?
I mean, it's barely, but it is a movie.
Or is it like 90 minutes of a over drawn out TikTok video? So gross.
Who can tell?
I can. Tell? It was fucking horrible. All right. Well, yeah. Anything else? I don't think so. Do we miss any trivia, or who gives a shit?
Are we going to shave each other's heads? I think that's what our thing was.
Honestly, I don't know. It might be easier. Look how long this is getting. Subscribe. Check this out next week.
Do the things.
The things.
And stuff.
Discontinue operation. Discontinue operation.